The numbers swam on the screen, a grid of sterile black ink on a white background, but they felt like a punch to the gut. My eyes traced the withdrawal line, dated just 3 weeks ago. The amount was staggering. $700,000. Words blurred. Destination: Taylor and Associates. C notes, settlement payment. My daughter's name was at the top of the statement. Her trust fund. It wasn't possible. This was secure. This was sacred. Money set aside since the day she was born, contributions from my parents, from me, carefully managed, meant for her education, her future, everything he had promised to protect. $700,000, gone, sent to a law firm I didn't recognize, labeled settlement payment. My breath hitched. The room seemed to tilt. The antique clock on the mantel ticked, a ridiculously calm sound in the suddenly chaotic universe of my living room. I scrolled down, frantically searching for anything, any explanation. There was nothing. Just that one line, a gaping wound in the balance. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. It felt heavy, heavier than stone. This wasn't just a mistake. This was deliberate. The air thickened, becoming hard to breathe. My carefully constructed world, the one built on trust and shared dreams, was crumbling around me, soundlessly at first, like dust settling after a distant explosion. I need you to do me a favor. Take a deep breath with me. Let the stillness of this moment settle. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. And if you're feeling this story, feeling that knot in your stomach, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. It feels like a lifetime ago, but it was only a few years. We had built a good life, a beautiful home, a daughter we adored, a comfortable routine. Michael was Michael. Driven, successful, charming. He worked hard, and I supported him, managing the home, raising our daughter, building my own small freelance career that gave me flexibility. We were a team, or I thought we were. The trust fund was a joint decision, a point of pride. My parents had given us an initial sum to start it, a legacy for their only grandchild. We added to it religiously. Every bonus, every tax refund, a portion went in. It was our daughter's safety net, her springboard. Michael handled the investments, the statements. He was good with money, or so I believed. He'd show me the summary page sometimes, the healthy growth, a smile on his face. For her future, he'd say, his eyes sparkling. I never saw the detailed transaction history. Why would I? This was our daughter, our future. Trust was the currency of our marriage. It felt richer than any bank account. The cracks had started subtly, so subtly I rationalized them away. Late nights at the office became more frequent. Business trips extended by a day or two. He was more stressed, less present. I told myself it was the pressure of his job, the market. I tried to be understanding, supportive. I cooked his favorite meals, made sure the house was a peaceful haven. I tried to bridge the growing distance with conversation, with affection. He'd pull away sometimes, physically flinch at a touch, and I'd blame myself. Was I not enough? Was I too demanding? The internal questions gnawed at me in the quiet hours. Then came the lawsuit. It was public, messy. A woman, a former colleague of Michael's, was suing him, his company. Allegations of workplace misconduct, a toxic environment, personal damages. Her name was Clara. The details were vague, shrouded in corporate speak and legal jargon in the news reports. Michael dismissed it as baseless, a shake job, the cost of doing business at his level. He seemed annoyed, but not panicked. He hired a high-profile legal team, one of the best in the city. They'll handle it, he'd assured me, his voice tight. Just a nuisance. He never mentioned settling. He always spoke of fighting it, clearing his name. The legal bills must have been astronomical, but he never complained. He just seemed more distant, colder. Our conversations became transactional, logistics, our daughter's schedule, household needs. The intimacy, the shared laughter, the easy comfort, it was all replaced by a brittle politeness. I felt like I was living with a stranger. Then I saw the trust fund statement. The paper copy arrived unexpectedly in the mail. I usually got digital statements, but for some reason this one was physical. Maybe a glitch, maybe fate. I opened it idly, sitting at the kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee, thinking about the grocery list. The world stopped. 700,000. Taylor and Associates. P.C. settlement payment. Taylor and Associates. Where had I heard that name? My mind scrambled. I remembered the news articles about Clara's lawsuit. I hadn't paid much attention to the law firms involved. Now, cold dread spread through my veins. I went to my laptop, hands still shaking, and searched the articles again. There it was. Taylor and Associates. P.C. representing the plaintiff, Clara Miller. It hit me with the force of a physical blow. He hadn't fought it. He had settled. He had settled a lawsuit brought by another woman. A woman the articles vaguely hinted at having a close relationship with him, using my daughter's money. Money that wasn't his to touch, not unilaterally, not without my consent, not without a legitimate reason related to our daughter's well-being. This wasn't a business expense. This was personal, deeply personal. And the secrecy, the lie, the theft. The word, theft, felt too small, too sterile for the magnitude of the betrayal. He had stolen from his own daughter. He had stolen her future, her security, to protect himself, to pay off Clara. The pieces slammed together in my mind with sickening clarity. The distance, the coldness, the late nights. It wasn't just stress. It was guilt. Or maybe, worse, it was the casual cruelty of someone who no longer saw me, who no longer saw us, as partners worthy of honesty. I sat there for a long time, the kitchen growing cold around me, the coffee long forgotten. My first instinct was raw, primal rage. I wanted to scream, to break things, to confront him, to watch him crumble under the weight of what he had done. But another feeling, colder and sharper, began to surface. A sense of absolute clarity. Screaming wouldn't get the money back. Rage wouldn't restore my daughter's future. I needed to think. I tucked the statement away, hiding it as if it were evidence of my own crime. When Michael came home that night, I was a ghost of myself. I went through the motions, made dinner, helped our daughter with homework, put her to bed. My face felt stiff, my smiles brittle. He didn't seem to notice. He talked about his day, the usual corporate jargon, the mild complaints about traffic. Each word was a fresh insult. He ate the food I cooked, sat on the couch I shared with him, completely oblivious to the silent explosion that had occurred just hours before. I watched him, truly watched him, for the first time in a long time. I looked for signs of remorse, of guilt, of anything that might explain this monstrous act. There was nothing. Just tired eyes, a preoccupied air. He was a stranger wearing my husband's face. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake, the silence of the house amplifying the turmoil in my head. The trust fund was protected by strict legal guidelines. Funds could only be dispersed for the beneficiary's direct benefit, education, health, welfare. A settlement payment to a third-party law firm was a clear violation. It was illegal. Fraud. He hadn't just betrayed me, he had broken the law. My early struggles were internal. How do I even begin to tackle this? Do I confront him? Do I go to the police? Do I call a lawyer? The thought of involving legal professionals, of making this public, of the potential fallout for my daughter, was terrifying. Could I get the money back? What if he denied it? What if he'd covered his tracks? He was smart. Cunning, I now realized. I spent the next few days in a haze, researching trust fund laws, the specific terms of my daughter's fund, the law firm Taylor and Associates, P.C., Clara Miller. Every search result confirmed my worst fears. Taylor and Associates were Clara's lawyers. The lawsuit was settled. The timing lined up perfectly with the withdrawal. The puzzle pieces weren't just fitting, they were locked into place with sickening finality. I tried subtle approaches with Michael. Did you get the trust fund statement this month? I asked casually one morning. He paused, buttering toast. Yeah, maybe. I get so much mail. Everything's fine with it, though. Growth is steady. He didn't meet my eyes. A cold wave washed over me. He was lying, right to my face. Over toast. $700,000 seems like a big chunk, I ventured, my voice trembling slightly despite my efforts. He stiffened. What are you talking about? He asked, his tone sharp, defensive. Nothing's been taken out. He said it with such conviction, such immediate denial, that for a split second, I doubted myself. Had I misread it? Was it a different account? Then I remembered the statement, tucked away, the name, the amount, the destination seared into my memory. The statement I got. I pushed, my voice firmer now. It showed a large withdrawal. He put down the butter knife. His face was expressionless, a mask I'd never seen before. There must be a mistake. The accounts are fine. They're managed professionally. He stood up, ending the conversation. I'm late for a call. He left the room, leaving me sitting there, the silence amplifying the deafening sound of my heart breaking. His denial, his immediate shutdown, confirmed everything. This wasn't a mistake. This was a cover-up. He wasn't just lying about the money. He was lying about the why. About Clara. About everything. The distance wasn't stress. It was deceit. The crisis deepened. He started guarding his phone, his laptop. Financial documents disappeared from his home office. He became hypersensitive, snapping at trivial things, accusing me of being moody, suspicious, unreasonable. He was trying to gaslight me, make me doubt my own sanity, my own eyes. I felt increasingly isolated. Friends, mutual acquaintances, saw only the successful, charming Michael. Who would believe me? This story sounded insane. My husband, the respected businessman, stealing from his own child's trust fund to pay off his mistress's lawsuit? It sounded like the plot of a bad movie. I knew I couldn't confront him directly again, not without proof he couldn't deny. I needed something more.
I needed an ally.
I needed a lawyer, but finding the right one felt impossible. I needed someone who understood the complexity, the emotional weight, the need for discretion, and the specific legal nuances of trust funds and fraud. I researched lawyers secretly, late at night after Michael was asleep, clearing my browser history meticulously. It felt like I was planning a covert operation. I found a few names specializing in complex financial litigation and family law. The first consultation was terrifying. Sitting across from a stranger, laying bare the ugly truth of my marriage, the betrayal, the crime. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Evelyn Reed, listened patiently. When I finished, the room was silent for a long moment. "This is serious," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. "If what you suspect is true, it's not just a breach of trust. It's potentially criminal fraud and a clear violation of trust fund fiduciary duties. Getting the money back is possible, but it will be a fight. And it will likely mean the end of your marriage." The words hung in the air, heavy with consequence. The end of my marriage. It was already over, wasn't it? This theft, this lie, had killed it. But hearing it said aloud made it real. The fear was immense, but beneath it, a flicker of something else ignited. A cold, hard resolve. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. Not with our daughter's money. Not with destroying our lives. Evelyn explained the legal process. We needed concrete proof connecting the withdrawal from the trust fund directly to the payment to Clara Miller's law firm. The bank statement was strong evidence, but Michael would claim it was a loan, a temporary transfer, anything to muddy the waters. We needed more. We needed to trace the money, prove it was for that specific settlement, and ideally, show he intended to defraud the trust. The struggle intensified. I was living a double life. During the day, I was the supportive wife, playing the part, listening to his mundane stories, enduring his passive aggression. At night, I was a detective, working with Evelyn, sifting through any document I could find, searching his office when he was out, looking for anything related to the lawsuit, to Clara, to the trust fund. It felt dirty, violating our home, but he had already violated it in the most fundamental way. The rising challenges were constant. Michael's defenses were up. He became more secretive. Bank statements started coming digitally only, sent to an email address I didn't have access to. He locked his office door. He questioned my interest in his finances, saying I never cared about them before. He twisted my perfectly reasonable questions into accusations of distrust, painting himself as the victim of my sudden, unfounded suspicions. His gaslighting was relentless. "You're imagining things," he'd say, his voice laced with false concern. "Maybe you should see someone, you seem stressed." Meanwhile, Evelyn and I were hitting roadblocks. The bank wouldn't release further details without a subpoena, which we couldn't get until we filed a formal legal action. Filing meant revealing my hand, and I wasn't ready yet. I needed the undeniable evidence first. I needed to make sure I could win. The clock was ticking. The longer the money was gone, the harder it might be to recover. Then a breakthrough, small, almost accidental. I was looking for an old tax document in a box of archived files in the basement. Buried beneath stacks of old utility bills and expired warranties, I found a crumpled envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a wire transfer confirmation, dated the same day as the trust fund withdrawal. The amount matched. The recipient was Taylor and Associates, P.C., and scrawled in Michael's handwriting at the bottom, almost illegible, were the words, "Clara M. Settlement, Final PM." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The direct link. His handwriting, the explicit note, the date, the amount, the recipient matching Clara's lawyers for her settlement. This wasn't just a withdrawal. This was proof of purpose. Proof of fraud. Proof that he had taken our daughter's future and used it to clean up his own mess, his affair, his betrayal. I photocopied the document instantly, hiding the original carefully. I sent the copy to Evelyn. Her response was immediate. "This changes everything," she wrote back. "This is the smoking gun. He can't explain this away." The discovery of that wire transfer slip was the turning point. The fear didn't vanish, but it was now eclipsed by a cold, determined calm. I had the evidence. I had Evelyn. I had the truth. I wasn't the crazy, suspicious wife he was trying to paint. I was the one who had been wronged, and I was ready to fight back. Not with anger, not with emotion, but with facts, with law, with a calculated strategy that mirrored the deception he had practiced on me. Evelyn and I devised a plan. We would file. We would subpoena the bank records, the law firm's records. We would build an irrefutable case. But the plot twist, the real satisfaction, would come in the presentation. We wouldn't tip our hand about the wire transfer slip. Not yet. We would let him believe his gaslighting had worked, that I was floundering, that he was in control. We would lull him into a false sense of security. We filed the lawsuit quietly. A civil case against Michael for breach of fiduciary duty as a trustee of the trust fund, seeking the return of the misappropriated funds with interest and damages. When he was served, he was furious. He stormed into the house, the legal documents shaking in his hand. "What the hell is this?" he roared, his face red. "You're suing me? Over a misunderstanding? You think I would steal from our daughter?" His outrage was convincing, almost Oscar-worthy. A part of me, a deeply buried, wounded part, almost believed him. But the cold logic prevailed. I had the evidence. I had seen his lies. "Michael," I said, my voice level calm. It unnerved him. He expected hysterics. "The statement shows a withdrawal of $700,000 paid to Taylor and Associates, P.C., who represented Clara Miller in her lawsuit against you." "Explain it," he stammered. "It's a loan. A short-term thing. Business." I was going to put it back. "A bridging loan? From her trust fund?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "A $700,000 bridging loan with no documentation, no repayment plan, no authorization? To pay a personal settlement." He began to sweat. It wasn't personal. It was a business dispute. A confidential settlement. "A settlement with a woman you had an affair with," I stated, the words landing like small, sharp stones. His face contorted. "That's a lie. This is insane. You're listening to gossip. You're being paranoid." He defaulted to the gaslighting, the familiar tactic. But it didn't work anymore. His words were empty, his performance thin. "We'll let the court decide," I said simply, walking away. The legal process ground forward. Discovery depositions. Michael brought his high-powered legal team. They were aggressive, attempting to paint me as a vindictive wife, a spendthrift trying to get her hands on her husband's money, conveniently ignoring it was our daughter's money. They argued the withdrawal was a legitimate investment, a loan with a high expected return, protected by confidentiality clauses. They demanded proof it was connected to the lawsuit settlement. They were confident they could bury us in paperwork and legal maneuvering. Michael seemed smug during his deposition, deflecting questions, sticking to his story of a temporary business loan. He believed he was untouchable. He believed I had nothing but suspicion and circumstantial evidence. He believed he had won the moment I confronted him, and he lied his way out of it. His lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Albright, cross-examined me fiercely during my deposition, trying to trip me up, twist my words, portray me as unstable. I remained calm, stating the facts, presenting the bank statement, explaining how I discovered it. "Did you find any other documents connecting this withdrawal to the lawsuit?" she asked, her voice dripping with challenge. "Any specific evidence proving what the payment was for?" My lawyer, Evelyn, looked at me, her expression neutral. This was the moment. The trap was set. Michael was sitting nearby, watching, a smirk playing on his lips. He looked bored, confident this was just a formality before the case was dismissed or settled on his terms. "Yes," I said, my voice clear and steady in the silent room. Michael's head snapped up. Ms. Albright frowned, momentarily thrown. "And what evidence is that?" Ms. Albright pressed, recovering quickly, her tone dismissive. "You haven't produced anything else." "I found a wire transfer confirmation," I stated, looking directly at Michael. His eyes widened, his smirk vanishing. "Dated the same day as the withdrawal from the trust fund. The amount is identical. It confirms a wire transfer to Taylor and Associates, PC." Michael's face went white. Ms. Albright looked visibly rattled. She glanced at Michael, then back at me. "A wire transfer confirmation? Why wasn't this produced in discovery?" "Because I only found it recently." I lied smoothly, a small, cold satisfaction blooming in my chest. It wasn't entirely a lie. I had just given it to Evelyn. "And what does this document say, specifically?" Ms. Albright asked, trying to regain control, her voice now tight. "It has a note," I said, my voice unwavering. Scrawled in Michael's handwriting at the bottom. It says, "Clara M. Settlement. Final PM." The air went still. Michael froze. His face was a mask of utter shock, disbelief, and dawning horror. Ms. Albright paled. The room felt like it was holding its breath. All his lies, his elaborate gaslighting, his carefully constructed defenses, they all crumbled in that single instant. The wire transfer slip with his own handwriting was the undeniable, irrefutable proof. It connected the trust fund money directly to the settlement payment and proved he knew exactly what he was doing, intending to use that money for that specific, illegitimate purpose. His lawyer, Ms. Albright, tried to sputter a protest, something about inadmissible evidence, about a forgery, but her voice lacked conviction. The document existed. His handwriting was identifiable. The context was damning. Michael just sat there, stunned into silence, completely blindsided. He had been so sure I had nothing that I was just grasping at straws. He never imagined I would find that one critical piece of paper he had carelessly misplaced. The deposition ended shortly after that. There was nothing more for Michael to say, nothing his lawyer could effectively argue against the face of that evidence. His defense was destroyed. His carefully planned deceit had been exposed, not by a lucky break for me, but by my own quiet perseverance and his own sloppy carelessness. The aftermath was swift. Faced with the undeniable evidence, Michael and his legal team knew they couldn't win. The potential for criminal charges, in addition to the civil fraud, hung over his head. He settled quickly, agreeing to return the full $700,000 to the trust fund, plus significant interest and legal fees. He didn't want us going to trial. The public humiliation and legal consequences would have been immense. The divorce was less contentious than it might have been, though still painful. The financial settlement was straightforward. With a trust fund secure, my main objective was achieved. Michael was stripped of his position as trustee of our daughter's fund, replaced by a professional, independent trustee. Our daughter's future was safe. The house was sold, the life we had built together dismantled piece by piece. I watched him sign the papers. The same man who had once promised me forever, who had held our daughter in his arms and sworn to protect her. There was no grand speech, no dramatic confrontation, just the sterile rustle of paper and the scratch of pens. He avoided my gaze. He was diminished, defeated, but also, I suspected, relieved it was over, that he hadn't faced criminal charges. There was no triumphant feeling of victory, not really. Just a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. The betrayal had cut too deep. Getting the money back, exposing his lie, it was necessary, it was a quiet vindication. But it came at the cost of everything else. Rebuilding my life has been a process. It's like walking through the ruins of a city after a war. The landscape is familiar, but everything is different. The trust is gone, replaced by a cautious reserve. The easy intimacy of marriage is a ghost. But there is also a quiet strength I didn't know I possessed. I stood up for myself, for my daughter, when it felt impossible. I fought back against lies and manipulation and won, not with force, but with truth and strategy. My daughter is too young to understand the details, the depth of her father's betrayal. She just knows her parents don't live together anymore. We are navigating this new reality one day at a time. Her trust fund is healthy, growing. Her future is secure, just as I promised it would be. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, the anger flickers. The sheer audacity of what he did, the cold calculation of using his own child's savings to protect his mistress and his reputation. It's staggering. But mostly, there is just the lingering sadness of what was lost. Not just the marriage, but the belief in a shared future, the fundamental trust in another person. The scar remains, a reminder of the cost of blind faith. But below the scar is a new layer of resilience, harder and more knowing. I learned that sometimes the quiet ones, the ones who seem defeated, are the ones planning the comeback. And that paper trails, sometimes, are more powerful than any emotion, any lie. They are the silent witnesses that cannot be gaslight. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever felt that chilling moment of finding proof of a devastating betrayal, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment below with where you're listening from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps bring more of these stories to life. Thanks for being here.